Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, veuillez accueillir, please welcome Shann, Caroline Parot en conversation avec In Conversation with Steve Dunlop.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Steve, for the avoidance of doubt. This is Caroline, and this is Shann. We've all had very interesting journeys to join you today. So our objective is, over the next 25 minutes, is to cure all of the world's problems and issues and challenges around mobility. In 25 minutes, therefore, off script, I'll end the conference and we'll go to the conference party starting at midday. That was a joke. Okay, so what I want to do is really quickly move into context, because context is everything for this agenda. And I'm going to ask Caroline to talk to us about the issues that are pulling and pushing the whole world into this agenda. She'll talk to us about the mega trends that are emerging that we really must take seriously and understand. And then I'm going to invite Shann to talk to us about how does that feel and sound in reality in the Singapore experience. Caroline.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Mega trends is, you know all about them, mega cities. Today, half of the population is living in mega cities. In 30 years from now on, it will be 3/4 of the population living in those cities, mega cities. And we already face today congestion, urban congestion, pollution. And in 30 years from now on, we will see even more. People are moving much more. In those cities, you need to have much more mobility needs every day. And can we afford to have more cars? So those mega trends are more population in the big cities, more movement. Everybody wants to move much more daily, everywhere, from point A to point B. And the cars in the system has an end, because you cannot put much more cars in the streets. So the mega trends are really how to solve those mobility needs without having too many cars. And then the second mega trend that we are facing all is environmental conscious. Can we put more thermic cars? Can we afford to have more electrical vehicles? How to equip those electrical vehicles? So all those mega trends are pushing all of us to change our vision on what is a mobility. Daily mobility, weekly mobility, travelers. And when we come to the cities, we need to find solutions. So the real stories we are discussing in the revolution of mobility, how to move more and more people daily, without having more and more cars or mass transportation, and without having more pollution. And today, those main issues are live now, and we need to prepare all the solutions everywhere, in every cities, in every geographies. The starting point being totally different. If we are in Europe, we are coming from Europe. Paris, London are having historical issues. And when we go to Asia, other starting point. But we are all facing the same issues. More people, more movements, and more ecological views on how to manage those stories together.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Shann, can you give us a perspective and context that you're facing at the moment in Singapore?
Well, certainly. Thank you for sharing with us some of the mega trends. And I think in Singapore, we see similar trends. The context in Singapore is that the population is still increasing. We have some 5.6 million populations today within slightly over 700 square kilometer space. And you know that we have a very densely populated kind of situation at hand. And so from our standpoint, the key mission is really to move people and goods very efficiently from one point to another. And that is to make sure that the economy continues to keep ticking and that we allow the people to move around. And with this context, we are looking at providing a wide array of different modes of travel for our people and goods. But in this context, we do need to provide a preference in terms of public transport, in terms of enabling people to walk more, to cycle more, to their destinations rather than driving. And so one of the mega trends that Catherine mentioned about reducing private car ownership is certainly what we are also grappling with.
Okay, thank you. So if that's a snapshot of the context, then what are the challenges that we're facing? And for me, I would like to explore two angles here. One is, Shann, what are the technical challenges, the infrastructure challenges, and the planning challenges? We all know that everyone loves planners and loves changing in our infrastructure. So what are the challenges that you will face in delivering this agenda?
Well, in Singapore, we conduct a very long-term kind of planning for land use, for our transport planning. And that's essential because in a small place that is packed and we want to facilitate all this movement without congestion, we feel that long-term planning is the way to go. One of the challenges with this long-term planning is that increasingly we see a lot of disruption in terms of business model, with the likes of dockless buy, with the likes of ride-hailing companies coming in to provide alternative mobility solutions. How do we manage it as we plan long-term? And when I talk about a long-term planning, we have a 30-year master planning, a 10-year transport planning, and this business cycle, this business model is not going to give you a lot of hints 10 years, 30 years ahead. And so how do we grapple with this to facilitate such innovation, at the same time making sure that the plans are not thrown off altogether? So that is one big challenge we have. The other big challenge that we have is the changing demographic, as well as the rising expectations of our public. We are looking at moving different type of goods, people with different needs every day, and to manage these expectations is going to be very challenging.
Okay, thank you. So if the infrastructure is a challenge, I'd like Caroline to talk about the challenges we face at a cultural level. Shann has just begun to talk about diversity and an aging community, but at a cultural level, what on earth will you do to make me want to give up my beautiful mini metro car?
Cultural changes is what is probably the most difficult to tackle, because the mega trends are here. What is here also is the millennials coming, and what is important in the millennials is are all living with their smartphone. So we have this category of people which are ready now to use the sharing economy, and we have this new population which is able to play not the asset ownership, but the asset sharing, which is true for an apartment, which is true for a car, now on. So this part of the population is ready to move quite fastly, because they don't want to have assets, they want to have fun and usage. So we are progressing a lot in the mobility area to promote all of us services which are on the sharing economy. In the meantime, we are facing in most of our cities also many people which are not ready to go for these fast changes that the millennials are having, because the cars and the existing system is still really a social status. Owning a car, at least in Europe and probably in the Western areas, is still a social status. And going without a car, which millennials are doing, is not in the mind of everyone. So we have to fight about what is the usage, how to break those barriers and mental barriers about not owning something but enjoying it, and to propose solutions. And it's true that to propose solutions, we need also to work in more open ecosystem. Historically, all the mobility people playing in the world of moving people or goods are verticals. You do car rental, you do public transportation, you do buses. Tomorrow morning, to be able to play with the new way of moving people, you need, on the business side, to have ecosystem to be able to allow and to offer solutions. And the cultural shift is how to change from a usage which was very vertical to open ecosystem from the business, from the regulation, but from the customer, to be able to get a use to go from point A to point B with multiple offer solutions, and not your own private cars or your usual bus line. So this is really how to coexist at the beginning and how to push solutions which are really serving the usage of day-to-day. This is not that obvious because here we are all agreeing that it is what will happen in real life, looking at what is happening in our companies. The precise story, the precise usage is, yes, I like the car sharing, but I still need my car for this weekend. So the full ecosystem is not moving to be able to break those barriers. So we need to make the offers. We are in a world where the offers, the supplies of the new solution will create a way to cut those cultural barriers because people want to move anyway. So we are really playing in a world where we need to offer, we need to work together in a more dynamic manner because it will be a long way where people were owning things to go to people will use and share other assets. This is really starting, but very slow. We see some acceleration. For example, in Paris, we see that regulation is pushing, we see them, but we need to accelerate.
Okay, I'd like to develop this just a little more, because if we believe that there is now an urgency to this, that this is not something we can incrementally and gently move towards, if we believe that there are climate challenges that we must address, and this is one of the means to do it, from practitioners' point of view and in the real world, do you think we need more incentives and carrots to pull people? Or do we need more regulation or sticks to force people? And I would like you to explain to our audience through practical examples, if you could, because there may be differences in a Europe versus an Asian context. Caroline, could you go first, please?
I think you need both. We cannot go only with incentivization because we need to regulate something. If I take the precise example of the city of Paris, which we are operating both businesses which are car rental and car sharing, you can enforce and have the city helping to regulate, but you need to incentivize customers as well. So the regulation will be a way to promote the services, to advertise them, to open the street, to open the parking lot, to open the mobility ecosystem. You need regulation. You cannot have everybody jumping in a total disorder manner in those cities. But in the other way, you need also to incentivize people not to have access to purchasing a car anymore if you want to go for less cars on the street. So you need to have a kind of incentivized process, but you need to have solutions. If you incentivize people to have less cars, but you are not promoting the full ecosystem of solution, you are incentivizing for nothing because people need to move. Mobility is an essential need of human being every day. So if you don't promote solution, you can still say less cars in the system. You cannot operate really. So we need to incentivize people, incentivize companies to create those ecosystems. Is it more regulation? Is it more ecosystem? It depends on city by city. You don't operate Paris like you operate London. It's the same story for Berlin, Milano. You need to have local solution, but promoting ecosystem.
What would the route map to making this change in Paris be specifically? And then we can...
In Paris?
Yeah.
So in Paris, we have a good public transportation system. And what is the city of Paris doing is encouraging all the other mobility system to become a complement and an alternative to the car ownership. So they are promoting spaces and solutions to be sure that you have, wherever you want to go, an alternative to the car ownership. So this is really public openings to create private ecosystem. It is starting. When we look at a city like London, it's totally differently organized because the transport of London is differently managing the ecosystem. But all those regulators are now opening the streets. They are aware that if they don't promote, push, and challenge the existing ecosystem, they won't manage it. So they are really opening the eyes, promoting, and asking either private company, either public company to jump in the story. But it is big cities, so we need to have many interfaces, and the system won't regulate itself. You need to have a master authority promoting, then you need to have many players preparing the ecosystem, private and public together.
Okay. Shann, can you develop that?
Well, I also believe that it is a combination of carrot and stick to make things work. I'll use the example of private car ownership as a context. In Singapore, we are already allocating 12% of our land for road infrastructure. And that does not include our big bus depot, our train or metro trains depot. As compared to 14% of the land used for residential housing, you know that we cannot carry on just building road infrastructure to support mobility. And so even before we talk about carrot or stick, our communications to our people is that there is opportunity cost in facilitating, in this case, a private car ownership. And if we continue to have to build very costly car parks, road infrastructures to fuel the desire to own vehicles, we are not going to achieve a more efficient system as a country. And so, as a context, we often communicate this to our people, and we want to make it a way of life, enabling movement of people and goods without having to own a vehicle by the individual. With that context, we put in very aggressive policies, or you could call it stick in that sense. So before you even own a vehicle in Singapore, you need to get a certificate of entitlement. And the cost of getting that certificate, driven by market forces, could be even as high as the cost of the vehicle itself. So it's a very aggressive policy, but we make it a position to cap the number of vehicles on the road. And so today we have close to 1 million vehicles, all types, at stock. And today we have zero vehicle growth. And that is the kind of aggressive policies that we adopted. We have also introduced congestion charge, another way of limiting the use of vehicles, even if one owns the vehicles, to bear necessary kind of basis. But on the other hand, we are very mindful that we need to provide incentives to nudge our people to use the more efficient mode of travel. And in our view, the more efficient mode of travel is by way of public transport or shared transport. And so we put in a lot of investment, billions of dollars, aggressively building up our metro system. And by 2030, we're going to double the metro lines or the kilometers that we have as compared to 2050. Besides aggressively building up our public transport, we also want to make sure that it is reliable and that the experience of taking public transport is a pleasant one. And so when ride-hailing companies come along, together with the present taxiing services, when dogless bike companies come along, we didn't prohibit or reject them, but we work with them. We want to see how we could incentivize our people to use the various type of travel mode that is in a way more efficient than owning the individual car, but at the same time make sure that any downside is managed through regulations.
Thank you. That's really good insight. And I want to develop it just a little further. We've talked about the role of the public sector in regulation and infrastructure. We've talked about the private sector and bringing the market to bear. How do you believe in each of your different contexts that the communities that this is designed to serve will be engaged in creating that future and participate actively in those ecosystems? Can you share your experiences in relation to specifically how you take communities with you?
So taking communities is taking the local needs together. We experience in our company working with different kind of cities, and I will take a small country, Highland, where we are in Dublin, for example. And in Dublin, they don't have a massive issue on public transportation. They don't have many things which are occupying us in the mega cities, but they want to offer really a car alternative to their citizens. So you need to discuss what are the local needs. You need to discuss the local ecosystems. And if you don't take care of what is done locally, you can have a super mega plan, which is a worldwide one. All our citizens in every part of the world are living locally. So what do matter in the mobility revolution is to be able to understand with each of the communities what are the real needs, where are the schools, where are the tennis club, where are the supermarkets, what are the public transportation offering, is there any money left, is there not any money left? So we have to localize all the solutions. People are living locally. And then how many lines of solution you need to have, totally depending on where you stand. You can have the ride-hailing company, the traditional taxi company. You need to regulate or to articulate. But what we are doing in the group is really to study what are the real needs. So to embark communities, it is something which is very basic, as in any private company. Listen to your customers. Listen to the needs, and then promote solutions. And solution A won't fly for Paris if it flies for London or Singapore. So this is really listen to the usage, the needs, and then propose new offers because tech is available, solutions are available. How to aggregate all of them is really starting with the basics. Who are they? Who are the needs?
Okay, thank you. Shann?
Well, with a clear vision in mind, and that is to move the people and goods efficiently, we want to engage all the different kind of stakeholders. And the different kind of stakeholders include our people, includes the union that represent the workers, but also include the businesses. And so on the regulatory side, we want to make sure that any mode of travel is conducted safely and securely. And we hear them out. If there are areas that we could facilitate, for example, in sharing data, to develop different useful products that our stakeholders or people want, we gladly share them at the aggregated level, bearing in mind that any private data, individual data will not be shared. And that's one way of facilitating the ecosystem. Another way of facilitating the ecosystem is also to being sometimes the lead demand drivers. And so from the government standpoint, if we believe that the use of more sustainable, the use of more cleaner platforms, vehicles is the way to go, we will try it out first. We learn the lessons, whether is it from the technology, from the regulation, and we share it widely with our stakeholders. I want to bring everybody together in this journey.
Thank you very much. Finally, if I was the global king of mobility and I could give you one wish, what would you wish for and how would you use it? Caroline.
Ahead of the revolution in the mobility, what we do wish for our customers, for citizens, is to have an open mobility system for all, meaning that we don't want to discuss only about mobility, but open the mobility system to change the society, because we are ahead of this revolution. So open for all in the society.
Thank you. Shann?
Well, for me, it's about everybody putting in a stake in getting the mobility system, the ecosystem work. And for the people, it is to be gracious, to share path, to share the rights that they have in the context of using public transport. And to the stakeholders is to coming along and be open and try. It could be technology, it could be the business model.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, our 25.5 minutes are up now. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. I hope you've been able to take value from that conversation from two global experts in their field. And I would be grateful if you would, along with me, thank them for their contribution and their efforts today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.